Tiffany Joy Murchison, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it sure is. And you got some beautiful art behind you. We were talking about that prior to starting. So uh, you're in a beautiful space. And
Thank you.
so let me read your paper napkin. It says, life is better with Jesus. And when you mind your own business, why did you share that with me?
Because it took me a long time to realize that everything is not my business, everything is not my concern, everything is not my assignment. And when I started to realize that my life got easier, not that I don't have challenges or hardships, but my life got easier, anxiety was less. Um, I'm Christian, of course, as you can see, because I said when you have Jesus, he's always a factor. But I remember one day, somewhere along my late 30s, being stressed out. And I have a favorite aunt. Um, and I was just, kind of downtrodden and feeling beat up and having all these responsibilities, family responsibilities, things of that nature. And I said to her, she was, kind of saying, well, you need to let go of some things and XYZ. And I said to her, well, God never gives you anything that you can't bear. And she paused and said, did he give that to you? Or did you decide to take all of that stuff on all by yourself? And I had to stop and think. And I said, well, Auntie, I don't know. And she said to me, well, you go pray and you ask him and you come back and you tell me what he says. And so a few days later, she called me and said, did you pray? Did you ask God? And I said, yeah, I did. And she said, well, what was the response you got? And I truly felt like the Lord said, fool, I did not tell you to do all those things. Mind your business. And so, hence, I am always telling my kids, myself, my friends, like, is that your business? Mind your business, right? And it just became a mantra. So here we are.
That's it's so powerful when we two things that I think really struck me about that was you had a real conversation with your aunt. Obviously, she's a
Mhm.
special person to you, right?
Absolutely.
So how important is it as an entrepreneur to have people that you can be that transparent with? And like, I mean, for you, having her and that unconditional support was important, right?
It's crucial as an entrepreneur. Um, Telling another story, when I started the business in my home. That got to be too much. So I got my first office, which was in a co working space, and quickly became fast friends with some of the entrepreneurs in the co working space. And another person who is very important to me is another entrepreneur. His name is Juan Perez. And when I met his wife for the first time, I introduced myself as his coworker. Now, we really technically weren't coworkers because we didn't work for the same company or even work together. We both had different businesses, but our offices were in the same vicinity. And he said to me, you know what? When you said that, I had to think about it because entrepreneurship really is very lonely, especially if you don't have, a team that works with you in that same location, especially now with everybody hybrid. And so he and I and another colleague and friend of ours have since that time purposely moved our office locations together. So we are all in the same building. We used to be all three in a row, right? The most recent location, it's Juan and I are next to each other, and Carrie is across the other side because they just didn't have the space. But we go in and negotiate our lease together. We go in like Voltron, and the three of us go in together. We each have strengths and we have weaknesses. And where I'm weak, I let the two fellas handle it. And then they'll say, well, Tiffany, we need to write a letter and you craft it. And I'll write the letter and they'll negotiate the numbers according to the square footage and all this other stuff. And we come out on top. But it is so important to have support in a number of different ways. Both, like my aunt, like I said, she's going to pray for me, she's going to encourage me, she's one of my biggest cheerleaders. And then I also have these two guys that are now like brothers to me that understand my plight as an entrepreneur as well, and as an entrepreneur of color, right? So it's essential. I couldn't do any of this without my village, none of it.
That's amazing, and that's what a blessing. So at the same time as not everything being your business or your assignment, it's also not your burden, right? Like it's not, so you're
Exactly.
not alone in all of that by being with people who care about you and you can actually be transparent with, right?
Absolutely. Knowing what you should do or how far you should do it for someone else is essential. And that's one of the reasons why I say, is that your business? Mind your own business, right? There are going to be things, responsibilities that you have, your family, so your children, your spouse, those are responsibilities that you have. You have to start looking at the lines that get blurred when it is a friend or a distant relative that's always in need, or when you're the first one in your family to achieve a certain status. So the rest of the family kind of depends on you, right? If you have quote unquote made it, then anytime a bill is due, anytime somebody's short on cash, anytime a child needs something, you're that first phone call. And that responsibility that a lot of um, people feel, because culturally that's the way we were taught to be, right? Communal and family first and all of that. um, as an entrepreneur, you really can't have all of those burdens. It's hard when you work for a company, because I spent 20 some odd years in corporate, and that was difficult. But I always knew, at least I thought I always knew, that a check was coming next week, so I could spend extra here because I knew that a check was coming here, right? So I could plan to, I can give them this and then I can make up for it here. As an entrepreneur, if you're not all in, there's no money, there's no vacation days for you, paid vacation. You don't have all of that stuff. And so I quickly had to tighten up and mind my own business, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about your evolution from corporate. You said 20 years in corporate, and you sort of dropped a little hint. I thought that a check was coming. Why did you say that?
So I um, started working at the telephone company in New York. It was 9X, then Bell Atlantic, and then Verizon when I was 18, 19 years old. And the purpose at the time was because they had tuition reimbursement and I wanted to go to school. And my mom could not afford to put me through college. And so my plan was I was going to work there for 4 years, I was going to get my degree, and then I was out of there. Well, at the time, a good utility job back then, a degree wasn't what they were so focused on. So you could move up the ranks fairly quickly if you were smart and worked hard. And that's what I did. So I ended up spending almost 15 years at what is now Verizon. Um, and I became a mom, bought a house, bought a new car, got laid off,
Mm.
in that order. Um, and I said, okay, this is not apparently where I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to be doing. And I kind of, words have power. I kind of said, hey, listen, look, Lord, I'm tired of being at Verizon. And I started interviewing other places, and I had surgery and said, hey, Lord, if I had a way to pay off all my bills, I wouldn't go back. Well, when I went back to work, I got laid off, right? But I had a severance package, and I had been smart and made some good investments. So I coasted for a couple of years. My daughter and I traveled. I piddled around like a trust fund kid for about 2 years. And then I was like, wait, my bank account's looking a little funny. It's time to go back into the workforce. Um, but I didn't have a degree. So I went back to school and finished, right? Finished my degree, went back to work for a company who shall remain nameless right now. It was the middle of the bailout. I took a 55% salary cut just so I could have a job, worked there, worked my way back up. Hurricane Sandy hit, I got laid off again. Okay, what am I going to do now? Right. So at that time is when I formed the LLC, which now is TJM Co Media Boutique. And it wasn't quite comms and PR. It was kind of a mosh posh of all the things I had done in my corporate life, and just wasn't comfortable. And then a really dear friend and mentor called me and said, hey, I got promoted. I need you to come back. And I went back. And I said to the Lord, okay, give me 6 months, 6 months to save up some money, and then I'm going to focus on my own business. 6 months turned into almost 2 years. I had a great salary, a great team, accomplished a lot, and then I got laid off again. So I tell people that the Lord had to kick me out of corporate America 3 times before I would actually listen. And that was 2014. This December of 2014 is when I found out I would not have a job in 30 days. I went on a trip with my sisters and sat down and made this big announcement that I was losing my job yet again and that I was not going to go back into the corporate space. And my one of my eldest sisters, who is the consummate professional, um, said, "Well, if anybody can do it, you can, and you have all of us here to support you." And I kind of want to be like, all right, where's my sister? What did you do with my sister? Who are you? What did you do with my sister? Right? Because not having a job was just not a thing for her. But she said, "You got it, and you've got support." And I said, "Okay." And so my last day at corporate for that company was the last Friday of January. I chronicled my last ride in an elevator, my last time needing to put on a suit for work. So I thought. And then that Monday morning, I went to IKEA and bought a bunch of furniture from the as is department in IKEA and orchestrated my basement with printers and all kind of stuff and changed the company name, and TJM Co was born.
That's amazing. One of the things that I think is incredible about your story is a lot of people go through those kinds of down periods alone. And you, not only did you not do that, you had people with you and you made sure of that by being transparent and open with them. But it's kind of what your business is all about, right? It's about communication and bringing people together, especially within special communities. So it's almost like you took what you do and bring it to the world, isn't it?
Yeah, now that you say that, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. And I think if you talk to my family, they'll say that I'm actually not as communicative as I might appear to be now. I kind of just make these big announcements. This is what I'm doing. And they're like, okay. And I don't, one of the things that I've learned later on in life is to ask for help in a different way. I would
Mm.
say I always, I had people that I could lean on, like my aunts and things like that. But I have learned that as a Black woman in America, we have a tendency to wear the struggle on our sleeve like a badge of honor. And I could remember being a little girl and my mother saying that women who had dishwashers were lazy until she got a dishwasher. She always thought a woman had a dishwasher was lazy until she got a dishwasher, right? And so now I'm at the point in my life where wherever the help is coming from, whether it's technology, whether it is hiring someone else to do something that's not really within my wheelhouse or that I could do, but is it really my efficient use, most efficient use of my time, right? So there was a time when I wanted to be the bottle washer, the cook, all the things, and you could say, I did it. I did it all on my own. I'm learning quickly that that's not a badge of honor, um, and that there's nothing wrong with accepting help um, and minding the things that are my business. So my accounting is my business to some degree, but it's the bookkeeper's business to manage the books and mine to review it, right? So you do your
Mhm.
job. I'm going to mind my business over here until I hear my name called, and then we move forward. Right. So I think as Black women, I think women of color, but especially Black women, we tend to wear the struggle like we're proud to say we did it on our own. And I think there's a difference between hustle and struggle. Um, and I
Let's
think we
talk
need
about
to
this.
learn that.
Yeah, let's talk about this because I don't think I've heard it said that eloquently. This idea of wearing struggle on your sleeve like a badge of honor. That's
Mhm.
a really interesting idea for me to understand. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. How important is it then for women for Black women, to have people like you be a role model that is different than the I'll bear it. You can do it. You don't need a dishwasher. You don't need a laundry machine. You don't need water. You don't need plumbing. You go get to that from the well. What are you talking about? Right? Like we did it. It was uphill both ways, back and forth from school.
I
Like
walked 3 miles in the snow with holes in my shoes, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah, right. Like there's a badge of honor to that amount of struggle and
there
perseverance, but
is.
there's also something else. There's another model. How
Mhm.
important is it that you elevate those kinds of stories of your colleagues, um, of people who are like you talked about your colleagues, but people who are like you?
It's important. I think it's important for the generations that come before us to understand that when we decide to continue to struggle, we devalue those that came before us that struggled so that we didn't have to, right? I tell my children, um, you guys have a choice to do it differently. There were choices that I didn't have that I worked hard to make sure that you all have. Don't make You're going to make mistakes. Don't make my mistakes. It is a slap in the face for me to the folks who came before me who fought for me to vote, for example, for me to not vote. Like, are we serious? People lost their lives for me to be able to go to college, for me able to even own a business, right? To own property. I'm a female property owner. I have my own credit cards. There was a time when women could not even have their own credit cards. And people fought, people that looked like me and people that didn't look like me. We were allies and people fought for those opportunities. So I think for us to not stand on their shoulders devalues the work that they did for us to be able to stand on their shoulders. And I think that the generations coming forward need to understand that. So I have a lot of sayings. And one of the sayings that I have is there's a difference between paying a debt and paying dues, right? And so you don't want to pay debt, you want to pay dues. Dues is what gives you access and what qualifies you. So, my working at the telephone company for almost 15 years, I started out as a directory assistance operator. People would call and say, "Can I have the number for XYZ?" And I'd type and give it to them, right? We didn't have Google and
Yeah,
smartphones
you
and
were
all
you
that
were
then.
Google before Google.
I was Google before Google, right? Um, and so I would say, as I grew in the company and became a manager, I would say everybody needs to start out as an operator. It was grueling. The hours were crazy. The flexibility was almost none. Like, you had to ask for permission to go to the bathroom because there was a board and a line and a certain amount of calls that we had to manage. But it taught me responsibility and it taught me respect for my work and it taught me to be on time, right?
Mm,
That was me paying my dues at 18 and 19 years old. So that at 24 years old, I could be promoted to a first level manager at a Fortune 100 company at the time and make almost a six-figure salary at 24 years old without a degree because I paid my dues.
yeah.
I didn't get myself into a position where I had to pay debt. And that's
And
not
you
the same thing.
respect the opportunity because
Absolutely.
you paid your dues, and
As you
I
paid your
really
dues.
like that. I also so there's a real subtle thing to your paper napkin, and it's when you mind your own business and you put a lot of emphasis in the way you talk about it, about it's mindful, right? There's a
Yes.
mindfulness to this, and
Yes.
it's almost like you mind your business so I can mind mine.
Yes.
It's not I'm
Absolutely.
checking out, I'm checking in hard,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yes. Um, you'll hear older folks say, mind your elders. It, it means that you have to actually intentionally pay attention. So the word mind has different meanings. The mind your business has various meanings, and you picked up on that one. That's amazing. I was a co-author in a book earlier this year that was released. Awareness put me on, and it's a collective of BIPOC authors. I think there are 22 of us. And my chapter was really about setting boundaries and minding your own business. And that's one of the things that I talked about, that the phrase of minding your own business has two meanings. One of them to stay out of things that necessarily don't concern you, and the other part is to mind the business God gave you, to focus in, hone in on the tasks and the assignments that are in front of you. Because when you do that, you show up better for yourself, you show up better for your children, you provide better opportunities for those who come after you and those that are really, truly your responsibility, right? You can be there for your family when you're minding your own business, right? You have more time in the day. Um, when you mind your own business. And that could be um, not getting on phone calls that you shouldn't be on, right? I remember getting a phone call with three people that were all in an uproar about something that had happened, but that none of them could do anything about it, neither could I. And about 30 minutes into this phone call, it clicked. Why am I even on this phone call? If I thought about how much money I made in 30 minutes, right? That was how much money I was losing at the time. And then I was like, well, hey guys, why don't we just, and folks don't like when you come in with a solution and they just want to gripe. And the call quickly turned to what they didn't want to hear me talk about. And in that moment, I was like, and this is why I need to mind my own business. And I was like, all right, I love you guys, but I've got to run. Let me know what happens, talk to you later. How many times in a day or a week or a month do we get distracted by something that isn't for us to do, that we absolutely can't do anything about, when you could have spent that 30 minutes with your kids. You could have
Yeah.
spent that 30 minutes meditating. You could have spent that 30 minutes taking a walk or working out or doing something. It could have been a nap, anything that would have been more productive than the phone call that only not only took time but took age, because that energy drains you.
Yeah. I love this. You said it earlier, and you just said it again in a different way. But struggle is a decision, right? You decide to continue to struggle, or you decide to do something else. You decide to mind your own business. And I underlined decide to continue to struggle when you started to share that story, because you made a decision. I don't want to struggle in this place. I'm going to go over here and mind my own business where I can be my best and bring my best and make and move the needle. And that doesn't have to be just ROI measured in dollars and cents. You talked about
Right.
meditation, you talked about time with your kids, and that's obviously very important to you. Family, the whole story started with the conversation with your aunt, right? So it's a choice, right?
It absolutely is. I say all the time that I'll hustle but I'll never struggle. And the difference for me is struggle is based off of emotion, and there's not a lot of logic and rationalization in there. It's decisions that are just off the cuff, based off of an emotional response. Hustling is a thought out, there's some emotion in there, but it's thought out and there's a plan. I can check off points along the way. So if I say, all right, I'm going to hustle, I'm going to work two jobs or three jobs, and I'm going to do this for a year so that I can save up X amount of dollars, that's a hustle. And at X point, I can drop one of those jobs. And then instead of the job, I'll take a class or two at a college or university, or I'll learn this trade or this craft. It may look to other people like you're struggling because you got this job, you leave one job, you go to another job, you leave that, you go here, you do there. But you actually have a plan. That's a hustle mentality. That's not a struggle mentality. With struggling, you just all over the place and you don't have any goals. There's no end. It's like a hamster on a wheel. There's no
Yeah.
end to struggling.
Yeah. No, I love that. But tell me, you said something, and I want to just ask you about this, because you said I'll hustle, but I'll never struggle. That doesn't mean you never struggle. Like, you
It
have to
doesn't
catch
mean
it.
I never struggled.
Yeah. So what do you do to bring intentionality into your days, the hard ones, the hustle ones where it becomes more emotional and it starts to feel like you're on the hamster wheel? What do you do for yourself in those moments?
I spend time with Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Um, Through the pandemic, I picked up gardening. I had a brown thumb or black thumb. And through the pandemic, in an effort to keep myself busy and to be healthier, I started an indoor garden. And so I try to level set my days where I have a routine. So I get up, I come into my kitchen, I fix myself a cup of matcha. Um, while the water is boiling and the milk is steeping and all that stuff, I tend to the garden, which starts off my day reminding me of how good God is. Because every time I look in this garden, there's something that amazes me. I might have gone to sleep and a plant was 1 inch tall and wake up in the morning and it's 5 inches tall. And I'm feeling like I have Toy Story going on in my house. Like if you know the movie, when nobody was looking, all the toys got up and moved around and they had their fun. I feel like that's what my garden does in my dining room, when I'm sleeping. So I try my best to level set there, and then I go sit in I have a what I call a prayer chair. It's a foldable, fuzzy chair that's underneath my bed. I pull it out in the morning. I sit it next to my dresser. I have a light there and some journals and some devotionals. And I just kind of sit and center myself. It's where I write out what I need to write in my journal for the day, what happened the day before. It's where I pray. It's where I listen to gospel. I might sit in that chair and sing. Um, but I take that time to center myself. On the days that I don't do that, because nobody's perfect, I absolutely can tell the difference in my day, the
Mm.
difference in my productivity, the difference in my attitude towards certain things because I haven't taken that time to center myself. So I try very much so to have a morning routine. The other thing that I focus on is the intentionality of how comfortable my home is. I have a heart for homeless people. When I am much more wealthy than I am now, I'm going to say it that way, I plan on doing something to help the homeless because I know for me, on the days when life has been at its most difficult, I have said, I just want to go home.
Mm.
That has always been a safe space for me. I just want to go home. I can't fathom how someone feels when they don't have that option to just go home and close off the world for however long you need to do that. So that's really my home is my safe space. I have my village. I can call my aunties and cry a river if I need to. But I also try to be intentional about how long I stay in a space, how long I'm angry about something, or how long I'm sad about something. And I try to kind of walk myself through things. All right, well, how bad can this get? And then what's the solution for it? So I really try not to stay there too long.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I really am catching from you, it's not that you don't have those moments, it's that you give yourself the energy and the time and the space to be able to remind yourself of the greatness of the day, remind yourself of the possibility of the day, watching those plants, spending a moment in faith. All of those things I think are very important. Tiffany Joy, I think that we could be speaking for a long time, but it was a pleasure.
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate you sharing this time with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.